Today, I'm working on a 1974 Tradesman van. This is actually a very neat old van. The owner bought this thing from out west, had it shipped into Ohio, and he had it kind of running. He ended up finding me through word of mouth, and he asked me to convert this thing into a four-wheel drive van. And me being me, I said yes. It took me way too long to build this vehicle, but the final product is pretty awesome. I really like it. We used a Artec 3-link front suspension. We used the original spring pockets for the springs and a crossover steering system on the Dana 44. We actually use the entire drivetrain out of a Dodge Ram Charger and made it work in this van. It's still the leaf sprung rear, nothing really changed in the back, but it does have four-wheel drive, automatic, and a 318 V8. Now it's back to me today after the customer put roughly 20,000 miles on this van after the build, because he was complaining about not being able to keep oil in the engine. Now when I did the build on the suspension, I did freshen up the engine that we had. It was a 30 over 318. It was a nice little motor. Didn't see anything wrong with it, but he kept losing oil and he kept having oil leaks, and so I did a few tests, and unfortunately I have low compression in number 5 cylinder. So I decided we're going to pull this motor out of this van and we're going to find out what's going on with it. But since he likes to drive, obviously he put 20,000 miles on this thing in 6 months. Since he really likes to drive his van, I'm just going to pull the motor that's in this out, and I'm going to put another motor back in, put it back together so that he can go play while we tear down the motor and figure out what happened to this engine. Worst case scenario, he's going to run my loaner engine while I figure this stuff out, and he'll be able to enjoy his vehicle, and we'll be able to work on his stuff at our leisure. So with that, I'm going to get this thing inside, get it up on a rack. Now I'm going to pull the transmission and transfer case out, and then I'm going to pull the engine out, then I'm going to put it all back together again. Because that's what you do. So in all, it looks pretty good underneath there. I don't have any cracked welds. I don't have any components of the lift kit that are showing any signs of abnormal wear. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to disconnect my battery, start draining fluids. I'm going to pull my transmission and transfer case as an assembly, and then I'm going to drop the engine out the bottom of the vehicle. I will probably have to pull the front axle out just to have clearance to get the engine in and out. Not that big of a deal. I mean, it's a little more work, but it'll be nice and easy to get the engine in and out. And then I can get this thing moving forward and back on the road. So with that, I'm going to get back to work because I got a lot of work ahead of me. Keep watching, enjoy the show. I'm going to start moving really fast now. So as my radiator pees behind me, this vehicle exhibited signs of, well, oil leaks, quite honestly. Kept having to put valve cover gaskets on it, and he kept having to top off the oil. So when I did my tests on this, I found out I could see the cylinder number 5 header tube was colder than all the rest of the cylinders. So I knew I had a contribution problem with the engine on cylinder number 5. So did a compression test. We verified we have low compression in that cylinder. So I went ahead and did a cylinder leak down, and we definitely have blow by on the rings. What that means is the combustion gas is when the air fuel mixture ignites, some of that is getting past the compression rings into the crankcase, overpressurizing the crankcase and pushing oil out the vents and then blowing the valve cover gaskets out. So I don't know what I did to mess up cylinder number 5. Don't know that it was something I did or not, but we're going to pull the motor out, we're going to tear it down, we're going to figure out what happened, what caused the problem, and then we'll find a solution, because that's what you do. When stuff breaks, you fix it. So as soon as this is done bleeding the coolant out, I will get it up in the air. I've got my stuff disconnected on top. Really pretty simple. I just disconnected the entire engine harness from the chassis, laid it on the engine, disconnected my upper hose, both my heater hoses and my oil fill, and that's pretty much all I have to worry about on the top. So now I'm going to go underneath, pull my drive shafts, pull the transmission and transfer cases in assembly, set those aside, and then I'll pull the engine down. Sounds real easy, a lot of little bits and pieces, lots of nuts and bolts. It just takes time and determination to see the job through. And that's what you got to do when you're working on a project like this. So I'm going to get back to work. I bumped the cable when I was moving my engine harness out. I bumped my negative cable back on. I'm under there pulling the starter off and it's sparking at me. I'm like, what the heck? Not much of a collector gasket in there. It may not be fast, but it's loud. So 4 more bolts and my engine's just hanging in there on bolt shanks. I'll drop it down onto my stand, take the weight, put the weight of the engine onto the engine stand, pull out the rest of my bolts, pull the engine cross member out, and I should be able to lift the van up and shimmy the engine out in between the axle and the body. I originally was thinking I was going to have to pull the front axle out of the truck, but I think I have enough room to do it. So I'm going to give it a shot and see. If I have to pull the front axle out, it's not that big of a deal. It only takes about a half an hour to pull the front axle out, all the way out of the vehicle. But I'd rather not have to do that if I don't have to. So I'm going to keep taking nuts and bolts out. I have my engine dangling in there. And that should be pretty good. Well, now it's time for us to figure out if I was correct or not. It's time to put the engine stand on the engine holding fixture that I've already bolted to the back of the engine, and we're going to see if I can shimmy this engine out from inside this van without dropping the front axle. Wish me luck! Engine is free. I gotta take my lower radiator hose off because I forgot to do that. So I'm gonna do that right now. Probably dump a bunch of more coolant all over the floor. So there we have our engine. We got to tear it down, figure something out, but I actually have another engine I picked up that I can just stick back in here, let this guy drive around while I figure out what's wrong with this other motor. I think that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do a quick assessment of what I need to switch over and see if we can make this other engine work in this thing for a while we figure out what went wrong with this engine.